Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Yep, today we're gonna start off this video by taking on the Mimic Circle, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bunch of trainers that hide in this ridiculously tall grass, mimicking your every move. And the thing about it is that since it's not from a first-person perspective, it can be a bit tricky, you know, figuring out where to go in order to fight them, or if you want to avoid them, well, avoid them. You know, of course, it's not excessively complicated, it's just that it sort of plays tricks on your minds. For example, if you're facing down and you're turning left on the screen, you're actually turning right. So if the guy from the Mimic Circle is facing right, then he's gonna go down. So it's that kind of thing that plays games with your mind, and it's not overly complicated. As I said, it's fairly easy to encounter them all. But the Mimic Circle isn't the main attraction on Route 119. No, of course, I've talked about it before. It's Feebas. Feebas in this game can only be found on Route 119, and it works very differently from every other Pokemon in the game. Basically, Feebas is ultra rare. Let's get this right out of the way. Feebas is nearly impossible to find without a lot of patience. The way it works, for those who aren't familiar with it, is that there are 400-something tiles of water on Route 119, and one important addition in this generation is the ability to fish while surfing. You couldn't do that in the first two generations, but from these games on, you can, and it's necessary, actually, if you want to get Feebas, unless you get super lucky or something. So yeah, there are 400-something tiles on Route 119, and Feebas is only found in 6 of them, but in those 6 tiles, it's ultra common. So what I suggest that you do is that, you know, there's gonna be a pond not long after this area with the Mimic Circle, and what you do is that you try to fish in all the squares of water that you can find in that little area, kind of like in a Zamboni pattern. You go up and down and up and down and up and down until either you find one, or if there are no Feebases in that area, you go back to Dewford, change the trendy phrase, and try again, because changing the trendy phrase resets the Feebas locations. But as I said in a previous video, the Feebas locations are not dependent on what the trendy phrase actually is. It's complete random. So if someone were to put adult anime as the trendy phrase, then find the Feebas tile, then if you told the spot to someone else and told him, hey, try adult anime on this spot, wow, this sounded really dirty, but yeah, it's not gonna work. But I've already mentioned that in a previous video, but I'm just mentioning this again just so we're clear. There is no easy way out. If you want to get Feebas, you're gonna have to suffer. And it's even worse in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, if you can believe it, because where you find it in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum is in Mount Coronet, in that, you know, that underground lake that you need defog to get across. There are like 600-something tiles of water in that area, and this time there are only 4 Feebas tiles, and they change each day too. So basically, you'll have an even harder time finding them in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. So if you have a choice at all in the matter, then I suggest you do this in Ruby, Sapphire, or Emerald, and then PAL card the sucker into your Generation 4 game. And it's even worse in Hard Gold and Soul Silver, since it's only found with the Pokewalker, and it basically requires you to walk the distance between, I think it was Boston and Dallas, or something like that, before you get enough watts to be able to unlock the course Feebas is on. Of course, there are also other rare Pokemon like Munchlax and Spiritomb on that course, so it's not all a wasted effort. You don't know who I am, do you? Let me guess. You're the Juggernaut, bitch? Anyway, something I wanted to bring up in the last video, but I got cut off when I found the Kecleon, was that, you know, the effects made by, you know, lightning and thunder on Route 119, they're not that common, but they're actually impressively realistic when they do happen. Because the thing is that if you've ever noticed in a thunderstorm, the lightning always comes first, and then the thunder second, depending on how close the storm actually is, and that is because the light travels a lot faster than sound. The speed of sound is something like 1,100 kilometers per hour, whereas light travels at 300,000 kilometers per second. Not even close. So if the storm is rather far, you may wait for a few seconds before actually hearing the thunder. And speaking of that, in Pokemon games, there's an attack called Thunder, but absolutely none called Lightning. So basically, a Thunder attack would be an attack based on the sound of lightning, but in any game, when you use thunder, it's lightning that strikes the opponent. So either that was a mistranslation, not quite on the level of Ambush becoming Sucker Punch, of course, but nonetheless, I question the reasoning behind calling that move Thunder. And there's also something that I wanted to bring up. A few days ago, someone brought up in a comment in one of my previous videos that what he'd like to see in Pokemon games is TMs for every single move, including moves that usually belong to Ubers or are like, no Uber moves on their own, like, for example, Seed Flare or Sacred Fire. The guy even mentioned Sacred Fire explicitly in his comment. So the guy basically wants to see just one TM, Sacred Fire. This thing would completely break the game, because by virtue of it being a TM, you'd want to give it to every fire type in the game. But can you imagine for a moment a Sacred Fire Infernape? Flare Bliss would be obsoleted in an instant, and not only that, that 50% chance of a burn basically would screw most counters to Infernape that you could find, because it has their attack and they're hopelessly powerless to get a strong hit on Infernape after that. So basically, it's just that I don't think it's a good idea at all to have TMs for every move. Maybe some that are recurring tutors, like, for example, the Elemental Punches. I don't know why they weren't TMs in Generation 4, for example. And, oh, loads of Wingalls here. And the NPC outside was talking about flying. And, oh, the Cave of Origin. We're actually going to go there later on, though there is nothing there in Emerald, sadly. It's the place where you fight Groudon in Ruby and Kyogre in Sapphire, but in Emerald, there is nothing there at all except a small cutscene involving, I think it was Wallace. So this is the watery area that I was talking about earlier. Route 119 basically runs alongside a river, and there are some areas of the river where you can't go at all. There are waterfalls. There's one that you can't go up because it's blocked up by boulders. And there's another waterfall that you can go up that leads to a rather large water area where you can potentially find feet. Whoa! Did a Magikarp at level 29, even at level 29, it just survived a Swift in the face. Holy shit, that's one tough Magikarp, let me tell you that. Anyways, I was about to say about, you know, that guy who was talking about flying and all those Wingalls. It's on this route that I'm going to collect the HM for Fly, which I'm going to give to Skarmory as an attack to replace Air Cutter. And also to Tropius. Oh wow! This guy was actually lucky enough to find a Feebas! If this guy can find a Feebas, I sure can, because he's using stuff like Magikarp and Carvanha and what was his other one? Tentacruel. And basically those are the 4 Pokemon that you can fish in this area, incidentally. This is no coincidence that his team is made up of those 4 Pokemon. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop here right now and I'm going to start looking for Feebas off screen, and I'll catch up with you once I actually succeed in finding one.